0. Good unspecified quantum time state, and welcome to Carl and Richard present Deep Space and Dragons. I'm Richard. Notably, I have a C in my name.
And I am Carl. I notably do not have a C in my name, but I'm not named after Karl Marx.
Allegedly.
I'm supposedly named after my great-grandfather. I never met the guy, but he was German.
Yeah, your great-grandfather who may or may not have been Karl Marx. We don't know. We're not historians yet.
I mean, that's true. We are not yet historians.
I mean, if I wanted to be a literary historian, that's like a viable career path for me. Like, I seem like the kind of person to have a super specific PhD, like literally just in historical naming etymology.
I gotta look up when Karl Marx died, because... Oh yeah, definitely not my great-grandfather. Whew, he was old.
Might have been his great-grandfather. But moving on from that,
Could have been.
What's new in the Carlverse, other than Marx?
So, a couple of weeks ago, I decided to just bite the bullet and resubscribe to Shonen Jump, because the free chapters are all fine and dandy, but the fact that there's only 3 that are free, like it's the 3 most recent chapters that are free, and then there's like still some series in the vault that I haven't read yet.
So I'm going to pause you briefly. Is Chainsaw Man in Shonen Jump, or is it just on the app?
I'm assuming it's in Shonen Jump.
Because,
I don't know.
Dang.
Maybe.
I feel like it wouldn't be allowed to be? But please, continue.
It's definitely like the most mature series that I've seen in there.
Oh, like, that could be a full episode. And for those of us who want to hear my earlier thoughts on Chainsaw Man, I believe I made a stupid episode title like How Much Chain Can a Chainsaw Man If a Chainsaw Can't Chainsaw a Man?
Couldn't even do your own tongue twister.
To be fair, that's it. That's all I got. Please continue.
Okay, anyways. So, I went back and reread some chapters of like Kaiju No. 8, because it's like I gotta know exactly what's going on. And the most recent series that I actually read, now from start to finish, is a series called Toriko. Where it's about a gourmet hunter.
Yes. I don't know why my brain blanked on that one. But please, for our audience, continue. But I'm like, oh yeah, it had a One Piece Dragon Ball crossover.
Did it crossover? No, right. It had the GameCube game. The first episode of the anime is actually a crossover with One Piece. And I assume the second half of that is just somewhere randomly in the middle of the One Piece series. But I don't know where or when.
If someone actually canonically had permission to use the One Piece world for their manga, I'd accept it. I'd be happy with it. Like, I'd respect it. But I feel like that level of communication has never happened.
All I'm saying is that the first episode, Luffy and his crew landed on Hungry Island, where Toriko was like hunting for gourmet foods. And then he goes on to explain capture levels and all the different mechanics of the Toriko world, which then get explained again in the second episode, because anyways, that's a weird aside. The main thing I wanted to actually talk about, though, in this What's New With Me, is that I feel like maybe I was spoiled by Akira Toriyama and his very, very clear choreographed fights.
Yes, he gets a lot of shout for that.
Every time.
So the only reason we have adult Goku is so he could draw musculature better. That's canon. That's just a thing you said in interviews. Like, yeah, I had to make his limbs longer for cooler poses.
And like we talked about D. Gray Man, where the fight scenes are just completely unintelligible.
Right? You know what's funny is JoJo's fight scenes are intelligible. They're just stupid.
But so then the first like 250 chapters-ish were pretty solid for Toriko. But the last 150 chapters or so Um, there's too many people throwing world-ending moves and punches and techniques, and it becomes unintelligible. And it kind of feels like that's just kind of how things go when your scale of combat gets to that kind of grungier level.
It's funny
But then
though,
I think
is
about
like,
Dragon Ball Z, and it's like that.
although
Why
to be
can't people
fair,
just be like Akira Toriyama?
Dragon Ball Z, to like counterbalance a bit, its power scaling is notoriously bad because it doesn't feel like people are getting stronger. Like, they're like, oh yeah, Goku just slaps Krillin in Dragon Ball Super while Super Saiyan Blue and it does nothing. It's like his fight sequences don't care about his internal logic because he's still a gag artist at his core, or was. Right. So when things with Toriko where you start building on themselves, your fight gets unintelligible because of power scaling. But it's kind of like a unique privilege he had, where it's like people assumed Dragon Ball had well thought out, reasonable. People acted like Dragon Ball had a hard magic system when it absolutely did not.
Absolutely did not.
It's like Roshi is just blowing up the moon for a gag bit, and that's just people are using it as an argument to why this character should beat this character. I'm like, guys, you're thinking about this much harder than he was, I promise you. So it is hard to like have a run. Actually, a lot of it's about tempo, though. So I've given this rant a while, and we don't have the episode time for me to give it again. But I call it Great Ninja War Syndrome, where a series will be reasonably paced and then just break into Naruto's Great Ninja War for some reason. Which I can also say the Great Ninja War also felt like it was... Bleach did the same thing with the Hondo Muko arc, where they just threw the characters I already had against other characters in a bunch of fights for no real reason. Like, my biggest rant at My Hero Academia is they're in the epilogue now, and they just made it to second year, having went through, like, 5 world-ending conflicts. And they're pacing, like, to not have your series devolve into a unintelligible fight scene, you have to be very reasonable with your power scaling, but it's like you're almost required by the genre to keep power scaling, so characters keep getting stronger and more awesome.
Right.
Like, Naruto had that problem a fair bit, where it almost like had to scale down a bit for the Naruto Sasuke fight, where it was unintelligible and still they started punching each other in their stupid faces, and I loved it. Deeply love when it came down to them punching each other in their stupid faces.
Well, anyway, the point of this whole thing is that I think the first 2/3 of Toriko were really good, and then the final act did a lot of like weird time skips, just for like no reason. It's like they did a time skip just so they could do a flashback, so they could do another time skip, and it was. I liked Toriko, but the ending was subpar, and that's what's new with me.
Rave Master had a similar problem, not related to anything.
Fair enough.
All right.
Well, what's new with you though, Richard?
So, I'll try not to use up too much of our bandwidth with this story. So, as you're well aware, I run. I want to say monthly D&D, but sometimes it's bi-weekly. It shifts around a bit. Scheduling's hard. So it's been brought to my attention that one of my players has severe arachnophobia because spiders are terrifying.
Right.
And most games they play, a spider or two will show up and they'll be like, oh no, I get to feel deeply uncomfortable while fighting the spider boss in The Witcher. And I'm like, as a DM with infinite monsters, I don't have to attack people with their phobias unless it's, I feel like, particularly sadistic that day. You know, trigger warning, caution tape, all this stuff. Like, it's a long-running group. But for a new group, you literally would have people list out what they're not comfortable with to avoid from advance. So, right. D&D 5e loves spiders. Like, the Drow's entire things are their spider-like, right? They're spider gods, spider deities, spider monsters, and every random encounter table in D&D has some size of spider. So what I thought would be really funny would be to replace all my spiders with woodland mammals, but leave them in the exact circumstances as spiders. So they get to this cave, and they see these silken webs, the dark atmosphere, and you see, skittering across the web, a possum that spits a web at you.
Okay.
And that's my strategy, is I don't even change the flavor text. I just substitute the word spider, and it's been hilarious every time. Like, one time it's like, you look up on the ceiling and see looking down at you hundreds of velociraptors, their eyes glowing red in the darkness.
Yeah, okay.
Because it's, I'm not even going to say unintentionally hilarious, it's just traditional hilarious.
That is pretty hilarious.
So, like, the other new thing with me is I was volunteering at the year above me's convocation ceremony and got a coffee
Mm-hmm.
mug and a t-shirt, and it was great.
Oh.
And so, I don't know if your work has this problem. Probably not, because you don't really work in a particularly bureaucratic or academic environment, but
Mm-hmm.
when I was a kitchen manager, and you've definitely done this, when something ran out, I would just fix the problem. Say we ran out of mayo, I would just go get mayo from Walmart in the middle of the shift, just run and get some.
Yeah, okay.
I feel like you would just go get pineapples or go get ham or buy a ham and use the slicer if it came down to it if you had a supply issue.
Yeah, okay.
So that's how my brain's wired. Academia doesn't believe in just fixing problems.
Right.
So it's like, there's this budget for this event, and one of the things was every graduating class puts out an anthology where every student has a work, and this anthology is sort of like a better idea than a yearbook, because it's a writing and publishing program, and everyone writes something and then they publish it.
Right.
So my thought was everyone's going to want to sign each other's anthologies like yearbooks, because at the last event I went to, they did exactly that.
Mm-hmm.
So I mentioned, oh, we need some pens. And like, oh, don't know if we have pens in the budget. We'd have to fill out a form. I don't know, maybe this other department can lend some pens. And I'm like, okay, they're going to fail to get these pens within 3 days. They just are. I have no faith whatsoever that through the power of bureaucracy, they can successfully acquire pens in time.
Right.
Like, they're able to get, like, tablecloths and things, but that's because this event was planned, like, 6 months in advance, and they had ordered things, like, 3 months in advance. So, I have a break between when my class ends and my volunteering starts. So I'm like, I'm going to go to Walmart. I'm going to go to the McDonald's and get myself a cheap burger. And I'm going to just buy some pens.
Right.
But this is where it gets tricky. Is a student employee just donates something to solve a problem? All the administrators are like, oh, you weren't allowed to do that. We feel bad. You should get reimbursed. I'm like, the amount of my time's worth about $20 an hour at the moment. So it's not worth an hour to get $2 back. So I go and buy like 100 pens for like $4 at Walmart. They're really cheap. I spent less on pens than my lunch.
Yeah.
But then I had to like hide the pens, right? So in our box of supplies, I'm like, look, they put pens in here. As I myself reverse sleight of hand as the pens in the box. And then like I set up the display and they're like, oh, you guys should get pens. I'm like, yeah, someone got the pens. That's awesome. And I'm kind of like gaslighting my volunteer team into thinking that the pens came from somewhere important. So that way I don't have to sit through the speech about how it's not cool for students to buy things and they would have bought them and I didn't have to do like it just wasn't worth it.
Right, because you get caught in a bureaucratic loop explaining why you shouldn't have been in that bureaucratic loop in the first place.
Correct. Where instead I could just, and the thing is, I gave them the chance for me to not bail them out, right? I waited to the day of the event to see if they'd successfully acquired pens before I just went out and got some.
Right.
And then hid them with the supplies to make someone feel like, oh, someone stepped up and did the pen thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, I just feel really smug about it. But also, every single pen got stolen by somebody, and there's just no pens left over at the end of the event. They weren't. They were default Walmart pens. They weren't signed with like the program on them, or even particularly nice pens. They probably could only manage to get the 30 so signatures out of the ink before they died. I just found it funny that every pen got swiped.
Every pen. That is pretty funny.
So that's what's new with me is I did a volunteer thing, and then I walked away with a mug, a tote bag, a T-shirt, and an anthology, which were definitely added up to a larger value than the pens. Plus me stealing snacks and, well, having snacks and drinks from the bar, the catering, means I definitely made back the value of these pens. I just think it's funny that it's like, oh no, if one of my profs is watching this podcast right now, they'll probably call me out on it tomorrow and be like, did you acquire the pens? And I'll be like, it was just so much more efficient. Like, schools don't just have a petty cash to then reimburse yourself with a receipt.
Do you think any of your professors watch their podcast? Or...
Absolutely. Our podcast is great.
Oh, okay. That's fair.
Plus, they're like, let's see if he cheated on an assignment, idiot. Ah, dang it, he's legit. So, that took us about 15 minutes and was as smooth as I could possibly make this segue. So explain what we're doing with this week's episode to the best of your ability, and I will chime in when needed. Dramatic clear for that one. That was like, you're about to yell out fire style or something.
No, Richard has been
that's me
working on a sci-fi project of short stories, and the concept, a colonizing ship that goes near the speed of light, but not quite, and thus will take hundreds, if not thousands, of years to actually reach its destination.
And I believe we talked about this more a few episodes back, actually.
It has grabbed my attention, and I've just been blasting off story ideas, short story ideas, at least in my mind. Some of them apparently are not very good for short
to
stories.
follow up a bit, so I'm trying to do a Ghost in the Shell standalone complex thing, kind of like the Canterbury Tales, where it's a collection of stories, but the main character of the story is technically the ship. And according to my spreadsheet, the crew of the ship go through the hero's journey, even though the characters are unique for each short story with a few exceptions. So it's not just that any short story goes, but there's a timeline of how advanced the culture is on the ship as the culture on the ship develops over the short stories. So, for example, in the first 5, very few people have been woken up. It's basically utilitarian, first-generation puppets are running the ship. And then we start to have, more and more people get woken up, and they don't want to go back to sleep. And then by the end of the story, there's a thriving society on the ship, which causes their big ethical dilemma of if they should even bother landing anymore, because things have drifted so much from their original point.
Right.
So because I mapped it out to follow this, plot arc, as it were, hence my various spreadsheets literally marking off spots on the hero's journey, the idea is that you could read any one short story in a vacuum, but you get a better story if you read them all in sequence.
Right.
Plus, I get to do some, cheeky things with Easter eggs and characters well, we banned this project because of the incident, and then 2 short stories ago you read about the fungus incident.
Is the fungus going to make it in?
The fungus is absolutely going to make it in. It just needed some reworking. I love the fungus. So, with the pretext out of the way of the colony ship, people are asleep, they wirelessly control puppets, collection of short stories that are Arcana-themed, let's deep dive into some of your suggestions, and also some of the, spoiling a novel I intend to put out on a podcast seems foolish, except I've only written 5 chapters and none of them will be in their current form by the time it's finished, because that's how writing works. So I'm not too worried about, spoiling things. But also, like I was saying, part of it is the structure that each story has to do 3 things of be an entertaining story, match a theme, and progress the story of the ship as a whole.
Right.
It's like how they joke one of the main characters of Sex and the City is the city of New York.
Okay, so at the end of our Google Doc sheet here, I tallied up all of the different responses that you gave me via text.
So for
a 9 out of 25 got a thumbs up.
It's pretty good.
6 out of 25 got no direct response.
That's bad.
3 out of 25 got fire emoji.
That's the best one for me.
3 out of 5 got a non-emoji response.
Oh, where I actually typed out words?
Yeah. 2 of them got laughter.
Mm-hmm.
1 of them got a gasp/shock. 1 of them got a meh. And 1 of them got I said sadness, but it's just a sad face.
So what's funny is one of my volunteer things I do is slush pile reading for a sci-fi magazine. And your acceptance rate is way higher than the average sci-fi submission I read. I don't know how much I can talk about it, but I was doing some slush pile reading on the bus, and one I'm just 6 out of 10. 6 out of 10. Ooh, you did really good. 7 needs work. So, to give some context, your ideas are literally being contrasted with me literally reading sci-fi ideas as a hobby on the bus.
Okay, so number 19 is the one that got the sadness emoji. And I'm just wondering, so the idea is, I started off by saying sci-fi mumbo jumbo because kind of
Yeah.
Technobabble, I guess, is the phrase I was going for. But anyway, so the Arcana, which is the ship, uses an artificial wormhole network to connect 82 points on the network across time and space. That allows the Earth to monitor the Arcana's progress and families to send near instantaneous messages back home. When the network fails during a call to someone's grandmother, the passengers speculate that they may be the only humans still alive in the universe and grapple with the existential crisis this causes.
So here's why you got it.
Actually, like sad.
So it's sad because you missed the mark in a weird way on this one. So it made me sad, not that the story was sad.
Oh, okay.
So when I gave you the original pitch, which was, I think I sent you the pitch file, a couple demo chapters, and explained it to you. There's a few things in this story that are just not only incongruent, but also directly rip the concept from the specific story I sent you originally. So, the artificial wormhole network to connect points across time and space directly contradicts the idea that these are travelers in isolation to study the human condition. And the whole point is they don't go instant, which is the entire reason they have puppets, streamer. It's basically the core concept. It'd be like the N-Jammer Canceller in Gundam Seed. We built this machine that takes away nuclear power, but we built a nuclear reactor that works anyway.
Right.
And second, the passenger speculating that this may be the only human alive in the universe and grappling with the crisis was the entire premise of the Hanged Man story that I'd sent you, / wrote for you specifically.
The Hanged Man story being the captain awakens someone, and
and the person's like, "Are we in hell? Am I dead? Are we the only people? How is any of this real?" So I'm like, "Oh, did you not read the story I sent you?" Was my first thought.
Okay.
So the concept, by the way, of the network failing to call someone's grandmother and wondering if they're only humans still alive in the universe is like a recurring theme, but also. Like, that idea will probably still make it in some form. It might even refine the original story with it a bit to be a little more clear. But I'm like, oh.
Okay.
So it didn't make me sad. It made me sad, but not in a good way.
Okay, well, so now let's move on to meh, which is number 16. Which I'm assuming is probably just too tropey.
So there's an interesting things that happened. So first, this was absolutely an episode of Star Trek Voyager, where they see the...
Okay, so before you go too much further, we actually do need to read the prompt, otherwise our listeners have no idea what we're talking about.
Solar winds cause the navigation instruments to go haywire. When everything settles down, the Arcana comes across another Arcana vessel from another timeline. So, this has happened enough in Star Trek that it's a trope. But that's not actually my problem with it. If I want to take an idea from Star Trek, but make it in a more like grounded, grittier setting, but not boring, because it's like some of the Star Trek reboots really want it to be Stargate. I'm like, oh no, I like it better as Star Trek. Like the best form of Star Trek is animated, because then they can just do as wackadoodle as they want.
Right.
But a couple of things I didn't kind of like it. So the instruments going haywire and them thinking there's another ship is more interesting to me than another one from another timeline. Because as I've ranted at length about Bleach, if you put time travel into your series, that is a big jump. Because, so the Arcana's propulsion system is actually based on a real theoretical engine that drops plutonium pellets into a constant explosion to keep accelerating you.
Okay.
So, theoretically, we can get to 99 point whatever light speed by just launching enough nuclear explosions behind us in space. Because acceleration is just acceleration. But the moment you have time manipulation or alternate universes, then the question becomes, why is the ship driving the long way? So, timeline travel makes more sense to me if I had some kind of warpy engine, if it was an existing technology. Now, if it's the instruments are haywire and they think there's a second ship, could be more interesting if it was like there's multiple vessels on terraforming and they think they ran to another one. But that might even be more interesting if they just ran into another one and there was just multiple ships. But part of the meh too is there wasn't really a full story there. It's like it was a story prompt, but there's no stories require conflict. That one's just a prompt. There's no actual conflict in that prompt.
Okay, so then the next one that only got one emoji representation was gasp, or shock, or whatever you want to call it, which is number 11.
Even the Archon is not immune to the ravages of time. To gather materials for maintenance, the ship's trajectory is planned near an asteroid field, and miners are awoken to retrieve them. Unbeknownst to the workers, cosmic radiation interferes with the puppets, and they're sent in their human bodies. I love that one. Gasp was my best reaction. So we build these awesome, super advanced puppets so to keep our passengers in cryostasis comfortably. They don't work, so you have to wake up flesh and blood humans to go die to save the robotic puppets. Is really deeply ironic, because that is waking up people to save the Tesla factory. Like, that's dark. It's like, oh yeah, the only way we could fix the Tesla factory is to send a living human into the lithium plant to fix it. It's like, can't we send the machines? Like, no. The machines cost more, but more importantly, we can't use them. So that's actually like a fun one. That's probably going to be the death chapter.
Okay.
Because a bunch of people, especially if like I make that, I had the idea to take it to the next level. So they're calculating the supplies for the trip and they've mathed it out, but more and more people are waking up and there's more and more screwed up experiments and they're running low on supplies. So they fake an asteroid field to send out flesh and blood humans to kill them to reduce their supply bases.
Savage.
So it's like the council's like, we can't send out real people. Another person's like, actually, this solves our people problem perfectly. So there's a lot of potential with that one. So I'm like, ooh, that's good.
Okay.
Because it flips the, like, especially if I put it in like the third. So one of the writing tropes is flipping the, like you establish a world, then you create an inverted world, then you synthesize the two worlds. That is a great inverted world to have humans die to protect the puppets. Like, that's a fun twist. So I like that one a lot.
Okay, so then I'm gonna skip over to the laughter emojis because
What?
Well,
Well,
number 14 was space sports, which I assume you were actually more so laughing at my transition from asking if the naturals concept made it in.
so the space sports, you had a couple sport-esque ideas, and I'm like, okay, a chapter where they just play sports, call it the Strength Arcana, and they just play sports. We had a full discussion in class about how a beach episode is actually really good for a story, because it lets people breathe and have some character moments. So, the idea that, oh, we're just playing space sports, and they're just some kind of sweet zero-gravity sport. Yeah. I kind of enjoyed the one where we're like, oh, it's pretty much just Splatoon. But a couple of them, like, okay, no need for subspace, no need for paintballs, no need for this. It would be more like, how could they sport on the spaceship would make it more interesting to me. Like, what do these bored people come up with to kill their time? Oh, they literally just using pipes and smacking street signs at each other?
I can see the appeal of that. This was me trying to incorporate more explicitly sci-fi elements.
Where there isn't actually a network. So to clarify the setting a bit, in the third chapter I sent you when you get around to it kind of goes a bit, is they don't have like a Matrix simulation type situation. To do it like a Matrix type simulation, they literally have to put people in puppets, mess with their sensory perceptions, and use regular projectors plus the puppets to crank up the feel back. Because they don't actually have like we put the brain into a computer. It's the brain literally just Wi-Fi's and the senses get all hooked up. So there is no like teleporting in subspace in this situation, because I thought those restrictions would make the story a little cleaner.
Yeah, okay.
So when I'm doing the thing where like, oh, let's do a simulation of humanity, they literally built some child-sized puppets, adult-sized puppets, put in brains but disconnected the memory parts, had them live an entire life experience at 100 times speed and repeated it to do simulations on people.
Yeah, okay.
Because there just is no brain-computer... the brain-computer interface requires there to be something similar to a brain on the other end, which is why it glitches out and people end up stabbing their loved ones.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
So, in conclusion, I probably will have a sports episode. somewhere in there. That's fun.
Okay. Then the other laughter was literally just a joke, which I don't know if that means it's going to make it in or if it's not.
No, I love that one more than I should. So
no, okay, you can read it.
When one of the Arcana's cleaning robots overhears someone referred to as human garbage, they go to investigate the mess. So I love the idea of this little Roomba that's been evolving on the ship for like 100,000 years, just ChatGPT and a Roomba. And someone's like, this person is garbage. And then the Roomba, short story of this Roomba trying to clean this person who is garbage. And like this little disc robot doing everything in its power to fix the life of this person because it's trying to clean them. Like, not like in a like kill them way, in a literal, this robot's giving them therapy so they'll shower. So they'll like be less of garbage so they can clean the garbage. Like they take it as like a philosophical challenge to make this human no longer garbage because they clean. So I was going to go super wholesome with it out of nowhere. I don't know what Arcana would be, but that's kind of what I was thinking on that one.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, that's probably not where you were going with that, but I love it.
I'm really good at generating ideas and prompts, but I very rarely have to follow through or skill to actually generate a full like story out of it. So I just throw it into the ether for you to absorb and decide how it fits best within your story.
Right, and like part of why
I don't really care whether or not you get it makes it in. I just
and like I have a massive list of my own too, because like when trying to generate 22 short stories, you actually want to generate like 30 short stories and pick the best 22, like, and then edit, trim, just deassemble, reassemble, combine a little girl and her dog. Do what you have to do.
Okay, there, Tucker.
Shout Tucker needed to keep his funding. Okay, no one ever thinks about how rough it'd be for the child and the dog to both starve to death because he lost his job. Okay. It was a logical solution.
Yeah, that's true.
No, it's not. Don't be a Chow Tucker apologist.
But what I actually wanted to move on to, which is one that you didn't respond to, which is number 23. A sentient gas cloud takes over a human body to observe the puppets and determine why they are immune to mind control. They are caught and expelled when the passengers notice this puppet is aging and acting strangely.
Yeah, no, it just doesn't really fit. Because I haven't introduced... So, remember why I really hated Gundam 00? Because after 4... Aliens? Yeah. If you're going to do aliens, they should be in Chapter 1. You can't just add aliens to something. Looking at you, Naruto. Weirdly enough, One Piece could get away with it because they like have like people with wings on their back that are on the moon. Like, that was established a long time ago. So that's the thing, is the sentient glass cloud taking over a body and being like, I'm a human and they're not humans, and it confuses me. Not cool. I couldn't figure out what to do with that one, so it just kind of got like... I left myself to think about it, but I never actually gave a response to that one. I think I need a new emoji for like, not valid. Like, I feel like I thought about the red line and circle, but that seemed a little harsh.
I just thought that this would be another excellent way to invert the story where the human is being puppeted.
So, that's interesting, but like if I want to go that route, I feel like I'd have someone like reverse download themselves, like download their robot brain into a human body or something. Like, I think it's the sentient glass cloud that broke me. Because the premise isn't, like, the premise is workable. I think that one's like... Some of the ones that like have no response are like warrant further discussion.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
That was the only one that I thought was like the other ones would be fun to discuss, but the no response ones are like, yeah, okay, well maybe we could even take a full episode to go over some of those. But...
Well, as I mentioned before we started the episode, I'm not overly concerned about time limits. So if we take the time to go through all these, I'm fine with that. I'll just bill you the $2 in bandwidth, which I already do, so we're good. So which one do you want to go over next? Because I'm enjoying this immensely, so this episode will probably go much longer than originally planned.
Well, so now you said that fire is the best emoji.
Other than gas.
So,
Gasp is the best one. Fire's the second best. Gasp is like, oh, I never thought of that. Like, gasp was me going, oh, snap. That's what in Richard to Emoji Dictionary, a gasp emoji is me going, oh, snap.
Okay, all right.
Like, an example of that would be when Roy Mustang boiled his eyes. I'm like, oh, snap. Or even better when... Actually, no, when Father's like, actually the center of the table is my chessboard.
Okay.
We are not sponsored by Full Metal Alchemist. I just know quality.
But so, the first fire idea was number 2.
As the Arcana departs from its moon base, a human stowaway watches it shrink into distance. After wandering around the vessel for a while, they meet a robot and realize they won't survive the journey unless they can swap with someone in a chamber. So, this one, so my problem, weirdly, is using something that literally involves a moon base for the moon card feels like it's cheeky enough that I would get away with that once.
Okay.
So I'm trying to figure out the logistics of the moon base a bit. Because it's like the stowaway realizing that humans don't survive on the ship and they need to go into cryosleep, which means they have to murder somebody, is great. That's fun.
Right.
Like, that is a solid 2,000-word short story of this person who snuck on board the ship realizing there's no way to live. So the moon base part, I'm not certain if I can make that work. Like, did we send ahead bases to stop for refueling along the trip? Do they just, send some drones ahead to build? Can they send things ahead when they're moving at max speed? But, other than the moon base part, the stowaway part is fire. That's going to make it in one of my chapters in some way, shape, or form. Because just regular human not realizing that this was, there's no extra storage space. That's such a dark Sophie's choice when you're looking at the log of all the passengers and figuring out who's the least worthy of living because your life's on the line. Because I don't think any person would not murder in that situation of asphyxiation over time. Starvation would suck.
Well, so the entire reason that this even references the moon is, firstly, I hadn't read what the tarot cards, the Arcana cards, actually symbolize, and secondly, I was trying to be on brand for what you're trying to write, but pretty much everything from number 4 onward is just like, okay, I'm just going to give up trying to make it fit into your vision and just send you ideas and see what ones do.
So what's interesting, though, is you accidentally had some good themes for the moon. Because it's about illusion, intuition, fear, anxiety, the false victory, illusion, fear. So the idea that they escaped their life on this luxury ship to then starve to death is weirdly on point. But I don't know. Like I said, the moon part might get phased out and it might just find a more natural place for it. But I do think that one will make it in some way, shape, or form because it's just so good. The classic how far would a person go when left on the Titanic? They're not about to 2 people could fit on that raft. Do they just buddy system into someone's capsule and hope for the best? Because that's hilarious.
Ooh, yeah, maybe.
All right, which one is next?
So the next fire idea was number 9.
Number 9. When the human body of a puppet champion at Fight Club is found dead, a private investigator is hired. To the dismay of the investigator, he's the culprit, having erased his own memories to see if he can outwit himself. That is the exact... So when alright, I gave you the mission statement of we're putting people in these puppets where they're functionally immortal to analyze the human condition. Nothing is more human condition than an investigator, the ship's investigator, getting bored of investigation, so to figure out if he can defeat himself, murdering someone, then deleting the memory of murdering them, so he can outwit himself. That is very on brand for the kind of story I'm doing. The champion of a Fight Club being found dead, that, I might just be cheeky with it and just have it be a character who didn't die in another story, because it's fun.
Okay.
Because, I think it'd be hilarious if, in the strength story, you have the human fighting a puppet and dying, and then in the temperance story or the devil story, you have him trapping him, trying to solve this murder he himself set up. It's pretty great.
Yeah, okay.
I also
Uh,
enjoy the idea of like the detective noir story, like that random episode of Samurai Jack where it was a noir detectives episode, being the devil
mm.
chapter because you think he's after a serial killer and then he's the devil. Like, it's not a shocking revelation, but it's shocking enough.
Well, I mean, the only real reason I haven't gone anywhere with this Fight Club idea, but aside from space sports, I mean, obviously, if you're in the mortal robot body, uh,
You're gonna robot fight.
well, you're going to robot fight, and what's at stake? The very fact that you're conscious.
So, like, to follow up on that one a bit too, you know who I am. The fact that there's no real fight scenes in my first 3 chapters is because I'm trying to write something with more of a literary slant. There's gonna be a
Right.
Robot Fight Club chapter. Like, obviously. I don't know if it's gonna be the normal human gives himself cyborg implants to try and beat a robot and dies, or if it's just gonna be just a chapter that's just Rocky but robots. It's gonna happen. It's a gift from me to me.
Yeah. Okay.
Because,
Okay.
like, I can write a good fight scene, but I'm trying not to. Like, you're just gonna get to, like, the strength chapter, and it's just gonna be blocky.
The last fire idea is number 18.
When all the puppets from Sector 6 of the cryo tank start to feel weak, it's discovered that mutant rats have been siphoning the nutrient tanks. An exterminator is woken to deal with the pest infestation. Afterward, the crew must decide if it's safe to let them live, or the chance they got infected by the new virus is too great. So there's some good ideas in there. I'm not sure how it's going to play out. But the idea that someone is siphoning the broth that keeps these people alive, and then exterminator has to kill the infestation, but then they have to decide if they want to keep the people? There's a lot there. Like, that one is probably, out of a lot of your suggestions, the one closest to as is, me just turning on the dangerous writing app and going at it for an hour. Because, like, I do find it funny that, like, oh, a rat got aboard, and the only food source is literally siphoning from the cryo tanks.
Right.
And in my brain, a cryo tank for this kind of thing would actually be more like, instead of being, it would need nutrients, even though you're slowing someone's metabolism, you still need to keep them metabolized. So,
Well, yeah, because they're using their brains, so the body does need energy to be able to actually control the puppets.
and rats are durable and intelligent. Plus, like, there's a lot of meta commentary I can have with someone running through the maze, like, ship trying to find a rat. Like, there's a lot you can do with that. I also enjoy the idea of these, like, robot rats called scraplets, but there's some fun to be had there. And also, it doesn't have, like, the alien twist on it. It's like, oh yeah, no. Just, we left rats to evolve over 100,000 years on this spaceship. And like I said, that one, because the stories are standalone complex, we have the rat one where these rats ravage their supplies, and then we have the death one where they send people outside of their puppets to fix the outside of a spaceship in the hopes that they'll die. So that's kind of what I mean by the stories building on each other.
Right. But so then we have a couple of non-emoji responses.
Those probably require further answers. I like how no response and non-emoji are different.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's well. So, like the first non emoji response was
Number 4. A chef awake. Oh, yeah, that non-emoji means I responded, but not an emoji. Okay, yeah. A chef awakens to explore the shift. Upon realizing there's no kitchen, they become distraught. However, they stumble upon a memory chamber, discover they can make flavor microchips from the memories of other passengers, and combine all sorts of different cultural ideas to form new flavors and share them with other puppets. So, that's a fun one. Like, you're right, the idea that you'd, like, take people's memories of meals to create simulated meals from people. And I'm still batting this one back and forth in my brain. Because on one hand, a secret club where they wake people out of cryosleep to eat real food is, like, such a rich person thing to do. But also trying to, like, emulate flavor in a robot body as the chef drives himself mad trying to make something taste good. Because part of flavor is imperfections. Like, it's literally the dirt and the shit in the coffee grounds that make them have their flavor. So trying to, like, replicate things that are completely pure never quite taste good. Like, there's a lot I could do with that. And I like how flippantly, like, disengaged that character is from, like, any big sweeping sci-fi narrative. He's like, I'm on a spaceship. I'm in a puppet. I'm a chef. And that's it. Like, I almost want to make that one the Emperor chapter about, like, authority, structure, and control, but about domineering and flexibility and tyranny.
Mm. Uh,
Or the Hermit
so, I
one would
mean,
work pretty good, too.
your written response was just Chef Ramsay in space, which is kind of a bit vague, but...
Yeah, like, no, like, there's a lot I could do with that one.
But so that idea, part of the reason I mentioned Toriko as what's new with me is because that idea is fairly directly ripped off of Toriko. Because one of my favorite arcs in Toriko was they go to the gourmet casino where you, at the highest level, you gamble with your memory of your flavors and meals that you've cooked. And they extract them straight from your brain if you lose, and then you just don't remember what it tasted like or how to make that meal.
That's actually sweet. Like, I know you're just kind of lifting that one from a random manga, but those few extra details are like, okay, that's actually really cool. The high stakes food casino. Because I went a different direction with it. I'm like, oh, that's actually the gambling with memories. I was already toying around with for a chapter I was working on the background. Because betting experiences is just like so dystopian. I love it. It's like, what are you betting? My first kiss with my wife. Ooh.
So I mean that's kind of where I was coming from, but I really like the other directions that you've taken it because it is very.
It's really funny is when I first read it though, I saw the word flavor microchips. I'm like, that sounds so dumb worded like that, and then I had to like my brain be like, not literally. In this context. But maybe literally. Maybe poker chips, you literally put the file of your favorite food in it.
Well, yeah, I mean, the details would need to be ironed out. And the weird dystopian sci-fi technology of Toriko never really gets flushed out to explain how they do it.
Yeah, but weirdly enough, it gets the One Piece Toriyama defense of, if you don't flesh anything out, you can get away with a lot. It's fleshing things out that make you vulnerable.
Well, and I see again. That's part of the reason I ended up not liking the last third of Toriko because at the beginning he has like this intimidating aura that's like an Oni demon, and then it turns out that that's an actual demon that lives in his cells and is this an embodiment of his appetite.
Boo!
I was like, yeah.
It's like when Ichigo's like, I have Quincy powers, and I'm like, you already gave him all the powers. He didn't need more powers in this plot arc. He just beat the last big bad, who's considered still a threat in this plot arc. He just needs to like. I was so irked because he never actually got a fight in full power after the last arc because they immediately nerfed him. I'm like, if you just put him back to being as strong as he was, you're good. It's a weird anime trope where they're like, we need to make our character always stronger. I'm like, actually, you don't. The fights are more interesting when your character is peaked, and then they just fight someone else when they're both peaked. Like, Kakashi versus Obito was just sick.
Yeah, that's true. But back to the matter at hand.
Indeed.
The next story idea that did not get a emoji response was number 8, which, I mean, the only one that you really actually responded to directly was the 8A. Because 8 is a story arc that begins with A and ends with D.
So this one definitely required further explanation. So, one thing I'm toying around with is I have my 22 major arcana chapters. And I contemplated reading this, inserting 4 minor arcana chapters, hearts, staffs, clubs, and hearts that are all like specifically connected. So if it was literally a 4-part story, I would put like chapter 4, 8, 12, 16 or something.
So let's read the first, the A prompt.
Asteroid damages the cryogenic chambers, permanently killing the human host of a puppet. Their best friend decides to join the so-called Naturals, a group who plan to survive the journey by using clone bodies. So if we loop back to my pitch I sent you in my prologue, it's like the first generation puppets were just you put a human body in a human brain in a robot body. The second ones are just 100% robot, you Wi-Fi them. The third ones are you clone your brain, and then you synchronize that one with the body in the pod. So it's like the third generation puppets are actually a clone of you that you Wi-Fi connect with. And then the fourth one was the combination of all of those ideas where Sorry, the third one is just a straight up clone, and you just go to sleep, and
Right.
they just one time copy your brain into the clone, but those become their own people. And then the fourth one is a combination of having the clone body and the regular body synced up.
Right,
So
right.
the naturals, as it were, are actually just third generation puppets, where they just straight up clone people, download their memories into them, and use the clone body. So that was already a thing
Yeah, okay.
that I was planning to introduce from the beginning to show like the evolution of these puppets on the journey.
Mm.
The fact you called them naturals, which immediately brought together the like Gundam Seed parallel, which is ironic because they were clones.
Well, but see, then part B of the story, I specifically worded it to be we follow the coordinator.
I know,
Trying to destroy
my
the
eyes
naturals.
glazed over. I need to get around to seeing the Gundam Seed Freedom movie. Anywho,
But the coordinator of a plan to destroy the naturals after its discovery they don't use clones, but instead override the consciousness of their children.
so my follow-up for number
which
B
is-
was read my second story, because that was the plot of my second story. Was a person literally made a clone of themselves to take over for them, and then I was going to reveal later that they were going to, in a different story, that no, seriously, they are just going to download their brains in these clone bodies. That's what a third generation puppet is.
Mm.
And then we get to mushrooms.
The mycelium network is one of my favorites. It has a soft spot in my heart because the largest organism on Earth is an enormous mycelium network. And I really, really do wonder and think, actually, that it may have enough neurons that we could actually communicate with it.
So, one of the premises in Star Trek Discovery was they had like this mycelium network drive that used like a subspace mushroom network to travel from place to place instantly, and it was faster than warp.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea that there's a giant mycelium network comes up in D&D a lot, comes up in things a lot. It's fun. Part of me was tinkering around with the idea that what if, for such a long journey through space, instead of using copper wiring, where we need to find more copper, we literally like have specially engineered mycelium to work as wiring on the ship.
Hmm.
And then that can go out of control. It could be problems because it's like, okay. But I'm like, so I'm trying to decide if I want the network to be sentient, or if I want it to be instinctual and it causes problems, or if I want someone to like connect to it and that causes the problems. Like I was trying to figure out how sentient the network of mushrooms is, and how much I want to play with the mushroom idea. Because it's not a no.
The actual prompt that I wrote is a few naturals survive when they find a mycelium network that purifies the air and launch a counterattack. When they accidentally kill the botanist, as clarification, the botanist is the mycelium network's only friend. The network retaliates.
See, that's fun. So there's a good chance like I use that in some way. I just haven't figured out if like I haven't decided if the mycelium network fits the theme enough, or if I'm literally blocking myself because Star Trek did something similar and is fresh in my memory. I honestly don't know. But when it comes to like the idea of the naturals versus the coordinators, it's more like the different generations of puppets, and naturals are basically how I was going to design one of the generations of puppets, where you just clone a body, put mechanics around it, download your brain into that body, and then you don't have to Wi-Fi it, so you don't have to deal with solar flares and things. Because the idea is that this becomes popular after the radiation incident where a bunch of people had to die, is when this plan gets proposed, and it causes effectively a civil war of cloning children to put brains in them is unethical versus, but our regular puppets didn't work and a bunch of people died.
Right.
And then they come up with the next one later where they're like, oh, we clone a person, but then sync it with the person in the capsule, and that's our perfect puppets.
But so then the final prompt of this 4-part story arc is the captain must do battle against a sentient mushroom network for the safety of the voyage.
So,
technically a battle of AIs.
What's really funny about that one is the captain is a funny character. So I've only used the captain in I used him in like 3 stories. And I have the captain being like his top hat, Slenderman, whimsical, Victorian vibes he's given himself.
Right.
So picturing him doing battle is actually really funny, and I'd have to save it for so late in the collection, where his robot arms just rip things to shreds as he's sipping a cup of tea. Like I want the captain to be just an eldritch monster demolishing its foes. because he's done nothing but sip tea and read books for 10,000 years.
Uh, so the other interesting thing in my mind is, like I said, mycelium, the largest organism in the world on Earth, that is a mycelium network. And if you were to specifically engineer a mycelium network to be able to communicate with it.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, there's a lot to... I'm not against the mushroom network. I'm just trying to decide if this is where it gets used. Or if the mushroom network is good enough to get its own book.
The question is a bioengineered mycelium network an AI?
I mean, sure. Why not?
I mean, I thought it was kind of funny, the idea that... Because the captain is... someone who volunteered to just have their original body die and have them downloaded as a AI robot to watch the ship for the entire journey.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of the story's vague whether he has a human brain in the body or not because he doesn't remember.
Right. Because it's been too long.
Yeah, he doesn't know. Like, he makes the quippers like the hard part was taking my own brain out.
Oh, okay, and then the last non-emoji response actually gave me a smug feeling of pride. Because your response was too good for 3,000 words.
Yes, number 15.
That's number 15.
After hundreds of years, passengers begin to fear they'll never reach their destination. The crew sets their minds at ease by terraforming the outside of the ship. So the idea that you have a spaceship and they never think they're going to reach their destination, so they build a planet around the spaceship is such a good origin story for a fantasy setting. Like, if you're like, oh, or a sci-fi setting, like, it's like, oh, this planet seems to be alive, and then it's like, oh yeah, that's because they terraformed the outside of a spaceship, so there's these cool underground ship dungeons, and these weird robot monsters, because we turned the ship into the planet, and then some asshole could just turn the engine back on and kill like, there's a full novel on that one. Like, imagine you're just like a farmer, you dig a well too deep, and you find your way into a maintenance hatch into a spaceship. And if you turn the core of your planet on, that's probably bad. Or you learn that your planet's getting colder because it has a generator at its core that's running out of fuel that heats the core of the planet. Like, if the core of the Earth was just a spaceship, that's sweet. But, like, it would be really hard to, like... Because a story like that almost needs slow burn, right? Like, in 3,000 words, it's hard to give the journey of them terraforming the outside of the ship and the payoff of it. That's one of those ones where, like, if I had one story in the book split into 4 parts... and I decided instead of going with mushrooms to go with they begin terraforming the outside of it, that would need to be 4 parts. Mostly because the space between them lets you go, okay, they're starting to build a city on the outside. Okay, here's how it looks after this amount of time. Okay, here's a conflict in it. Okay, now we can no longer land the ship, but we've made it to the planet. What do we do?
Yeah. Okay.
So as like a B plot for the novel as a whole, it could work. But as a short story, I'm like, it's the problem a lot of these Shonen Jump mangas have had lately, where when you try and rush through and get to the quote-unquote good stuff, the pacing gets wrecked.
Right.
And it wouldn't feel as epic as it needed to be if it just went through. But if it checked in every once in a while, it could definitely still work.
But so now we've gone through all of the... all the ones that you responded to that weren't thumbs up.
All right. So with that...
Are there any thumbs up stories that you found particularly interesting?
There are, but unfortunately, I think this is where we'll wrap up this week's episode.
Ooh.
So with that...
on a cliffhanger.
Absolutely. So we're going to move to our random questions and call it. Actually, I'm going to mix it up a bit. So instead of a random question, I'm going to give you a closing question. What question do you have for me about this project?
What?
You get one question.
I feel like if I answer wrong, I'm going to get flung into the chasm like the guy on the bridge in Quest for the Holy Grail.
That is fair. So instead, I'm going to find our actual random question. Ooh, this one's pretty topical. If you could remove something that exists in this world forever, what would it be?
Ooh. Just erase something from the world, huh?
Yeah, just completely erase something. I would love to have this power, by the way, if I could just, like, if I cut something with my Zombok toe and it just ceased to exist. I'm immediately thinking of the villain who just got rid of colors, so the color-themed powers wouldn't work. Just got rid of blue. But I would...
I mean, that reminds me of a manga called Medaka Box.
Exactly. That's what I was referencing.
Yeah, because he just, like, had the power to make things nothing.
That was a weird series.
No, I enjoyed it, but it was quite weird.
So, I know what I would remove, though.
I would remove hunger.
You're such a better person than me. Fuck. You just fixed hunger. Oh, that tainted my answer. Yeah. I'm going to tell you what my answer was, and then I'm going to have to adjust it because of what you answered. So I was going to say I'd get rid of the 5-day work week and make it like a much more reasonable 4-day work week. Because ironically, if you just got rid of that day across the entire world, people would have to pay you a living wage because that's just how wages stabilize. So we could just have 3-day weekends. But like, wow, I was thinking way too small. Yeah. Like, you know what I could just get rid of? Rent. You just get housing. Hunger, you're right. Disease. Death. Like, you know, I was being way too small-brained. Time. Let's just get rid of time and have everything live forever. Like,
death and time, those would be double-edged swords for sure.
Oh yeah.
You just get rid of time, then like.
Now, provided I still have the power to keep getting rid of things, I should be fine. But like, I was thinking like people who play music on their phones on the bus.
Ooh.
Oh, I hate that.
I was at work the other day, and this guy, he walks in, and he's just like blaring some music on his little like Bluetooth speaker.
Right?
And so then I'm like, hey, I can't hear you over your music. And then he just kind of like stands there for a second, says something. I still can't hear you over your music. And so then he turns it down, and it turns out he didn't even want to order anything.
So like,
he just wanted to stand there drunkenly.
Like, part of me wants to just get like rid of smartphones, even though I use mine a lot. I think it's fundamentally bad that I do such.
Right.
Get rid of social media. Get rid of many political parties. Like, that's just too much power. But you're like, yeah, I just get rid of hunger, selfish prick. I'm like, well, yeah, fair. Shit. And with that, thank you for submitting your intense random question to Richard and Carl present Deep Space and Dragons. You'll be put in a draw for a mug at some point. And you can submit your random questions by clicking the link in the podcast descriptions wherever you're enjoying your podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Special shout out to our one listener in Athens because it amuses me.
Wait, someone's currently listening in Athens?
I believe so, yeah.
Oh yeah. Thanks for listening to some random people across the globe. We appreciate you.
Right? Like, I really hope they're listening to us blaring on a speaker on a bus. But yes, I don't know. Drink some water. Have a lovely day. Try not to be hungry. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, like, going over the next 10 suggestions probably would have ran us to the 2-hour mark.
Oh, yeah.